Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jake Pearson. I'm going to call to order the Joint Planning Commission meeting with Murray City and Mill Creek. So welcome. Thanks for being here. We're going to have no public comment during this meeting, so most of the stuff I say, I'm not going to say, but I think we should probably introduce ourselves. So I'm just going to pass the mic down, and you can just state your name and who you are, unless there's anything else I need to say. Zach left, so no, here you go.
I'm Mike Henry. I'm the very newest member of the Murray City Planning Commission.
Is that what you want to say? I'm Maren Patterson. I'm on the Murray Planning Commission.
I'm Lisa Milkevich. I'm also a Planning Commission member.
I'm Travis Nate, Planning Commissioner.
So here's a question I have. Which one of you represents the station area?
What district is the station area in?
We got a map.
Is it one or three?
I think it's one.
Okay, I'm three. But I'm really close to it.
Okay. Can I ask you this? We're going around.
That'd be me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And then we have that large, or whatever.
Ned.
And live in one.
And live in one. Okay.
Well, now that we got that settled, I'm Christian Larson, Mill Creek Planning Commissioner.
Diane Soul, Mill Creek.
Sean Lamar, Mill Creek Planning Commission Chair.
Ned Hacker, Murray, Planning Commission.
Vicki Reed, Mill Creek.
I'm putting this back down here.
I think Zach's going to introduce them, so we'll let that happen later. Does Mill Creek need to call to order their meetings? I think you probably do, so let me pass down the mic so you can do that.
We have this microphone down here too.
There we go.
Yeah, we do. This is Sean Lamar, Chair of Mill Creek Planning Commission. Call the meeting to order for our members here: Christian Larson, Diane Soul, Sean Lamar, and Victoria Reed.
Thank you. Susan, what else should we do? Okay, we're going to turn them over to you. Yes, please do.
I'm Christine Richmond, and I am the principal in charge of planning for GSBS Consulting. We were hired by the two cities and Wasatch Front Regional Council to complete a station area plan for the area around the North Murray Station, which includes parts of Murray and parts of Mill Creek. And so we'll show you that on the map in just a few minutes. Also with me today is Erica Shimleski. She's also with GSBS Consulting, and she is the project planner for the project, for the station area plan project. So sometimes when I get stuck, she will shout out the right answer. I'm just going to admit that now. So I want to thank all of you for coming, and it's weird that I'm on a microphone. I'm just going to say that. Because we are at a point in the planning process where we thought it would be really helpful to sit down with you and my phone. Thank you. It should be in my pocket. And sit down with you and review what we've done to date, where we are, and the direction that the plan is heading, to get your feedback on that and get your ideas and make sure that you're aware of where we're going and what's going to happen next. So, station area plans are required as a result of a change to state law. Each jurisdiction that has a station for a fixed rail, BRT, a fixed rail, whether it's tracks or front runner, are required to have a station area plan that addresses future development within a half-mile radius of the platform. And so that's what this plan is intended to do, is meet the requirements of state statute. Once the plan is completed and adopted by each of the city councils, referred and recommended by each of the planning commissions, and then adopted by each of the city councils, it will be sent to Wasatch Front Regional Council for certification, and then on to the Utah Transit Authority for their additional adoption. So it's a process that's been laid out in state statute. So 1/2 mile from the platform, the purpose is to identify a shared vision, a community-based vision for the future of the station area, and to put in place and identify the implementation steps that are needed to implement that vision. We're asked to particularly identify opportunities and constraints within each of the station areas, identify opportunities for affordable housing, identify and describe that vision, and provide those strategic recommendations for implementation, particularly focusing on the next 5 years. But the plan will also have implementation recommendations that are beyond 5 years, because we're actually looking at a 20-year future. So we're not just thinking about, well, what can happen next year or in 3 years. We're thinking big picture, what can happen in this area as we get 15, 20 years out. So this is a map of that 1/2 mile radius. So here's the station platform here. This is Fireclay neighborhood. The boundary between the two cities is roughly tracks with Big Cottonwood Creek. And so this is the Mill Creek area. This is the Murray area. We have State Street, 4500 South, the Trax line, the Union Pacific line, and Interstate 15, which are major roadways in the area as well, or barriers to connectivity as well. So you can see that there has been quite a bit of new development that has already been happening in this area. So we want to think about how we can build on what's been happening there, and what the statute asks us to look at opportunities and constraints. So we also want to know of the things that perhaps can be improved in the area through the planning process. So any questions about that?
Just for my mental state here. The bottom is really south and the top is north.
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
And the circle represents the half-mile radius, right?
That's right. This is a 1/2 mile.
Okay.
And north and south.
So the station's really in Murray.
The station is in Murray, but the 1/2 mile radius extends into Mill Creek.
Okay.
Which is why Mill Creek is participating in the planning process, because the statute isn't just on who has this actual platform, it's anybody that the 1/2 mile radius touches. Okay? So our planning process is happening in 3 basic phases. The first phase is what you have, which is where we spend a lot of time walking the area, talking to a lot of people, talking to stakeholders, looking at existing plans, each of the city's general plans or other types of plans for the area, but also the regional transportation plan, trails plans, all of those different plans, and bringing them into our analysis to make sure that we start from a really good base of information. It's also where we had our first phase of community engagement, which is where we asked a lot of questions about what's working and what's not working in the neighborhoods down there that we might want to address as we go through the planning process. And then we started to talk about, well, here's what it is today. What is it that we want to be? What does this neighborhood want to evolve into as we're thinking of the future? And so we've done a lot of talking. We've had quite a bit of community engagement. And this is where we are. We're starting to identify the preferred approach moving forward, which is why we thought it was a good time to check in with each of the planning commissions. And then once we get through this stage of the process, we're going to start putting together the graphics and the information and the implementation plan that will be the map for getting to the future, that shared vision of the future. So what have we done so far? So we started by mapping and putting together a lot of information about the area, including existing land use, transportation. We pulled crime statistics. Those of you in Murray know that this is one of the areas that has had a higher rate of crime than other neighborhoods in the city. And when we looked at the crime data, that's also true of the area in Mill Creek that is down in this area.
Is that just in the last 4 or 5 years? I see a change over time.
Oh, first you have to ask the question into the microphone, and then Erica will answer the question into the microphone.
And can I ask a question? Would you rather me hold my questions to later?
Oh, go ahead.
Is that okay?
I want this to be interactive.
All right. So looking at the list, you mentioned crime, and I was just wondering if the data we've collected on crime for this study, what's the time frame? How far back does it go?
So for comparative data, we only looked at a year because the data is different, how Murray classifies data versus UPC.
Mill Creek, UPD, yeah.
UPD. And so for the mapping of the crime statistics, we have a year showing, but we did look at around 5 years. And so we've seen an increased trend.
Well, and that's why I asked, because I think before it was developed, there was less crime. With the new development, there was more crime, but then yet, more recently, the crime's been addressed differently. We're hoping to see a dip in crime, so I'm hoping you look back far enough to see all that.
Yeah. And crime statistics are a lagging indicator, right? Because they're not reported live, right? So they get collected at different time periods. So we also looked at safety considerations, which separate from crime would be crash data, pedestrian safety information, bike safety information, environmental, housing data, economic opportunity, and community assets. So we mapped all of that to take a look at how the area is currently functioning. We also launched a website that is a tool that we use to communicate with the community as well as to generate input. There's surveys and opportunities for people to put things on the map and tell us about things that are happening in the neighborhood. And it's an interactive tool that not only allows us to hear, as the consulting team, to hear from people in the community, but they can actually start to have conversations with each other. It's similar to any other social media where if someone posts something that someone likes, they can give it a thumbs up. If they dislike it, they can give it a thumbs down, or they can even make a typed out message response. We've had several in-person events as well, 2 open houses, and then 2 more opportunistic. Erica and one of our other colleagues went to the Front climbing gym and talked to a lot of people. It's a very popular place. They were having a band that night, so they had a big turnout. We also gave away coffee, juice, and donuts on the UTA platform one morning after sending out a postcard to every address within that half-mile radius, inviting them to come and tell us about the station area. And we've had a pretty good turnout. I mean, the area has a few thousand residents, and so sometimes, when we have 20, it might feel small, but it's not that not a big area. So we've also had a series of stakeholder meetings and stakeholder interviews. The technical advisory committee includes the police departments, the engineering departments, and other technical people from each of the cities, as well as representatives of UTA and UDOT. The Community Advisory Committee includes other groups that are also responsible for providing services. We have tried to identify residents of the area, but homeowners and residents. We've also had one-on-one interviews with a number of people about the area. We've met with some of you and some of the city council members one-on-one. And we've also had regional technical expert meetings. There's a group called SAPTAC at UTA that we meet with to talk about operational issues that we need to take into account when we're doing a stationary plan. So this is the current land use map of how land is being used in the area. This pink is the industrial. So the history of the area, as all of you know, is that it was an industrial area that when the station was first opened, when the first blue line for tracks started, this was one of the first areas that started to see some transit-oriented development, some new housing. Sorry, I'm going to pop into the microphone, and sorry. New housing, and so this is one of the areas that started to transition early, and so we have a little bit of history for how that's happening, and as over time that has started to spread out, and we're starting to see the development approvals happening here in Mill Creek for some additional transit serving development that is happening there. Yes?
Christina, do you know how much property within that half mile is owned by individuals or businesses versus Mill Creek versus Murray City or UTA?
So we have property, so most of it is owned by private landowners. We do have this area right here is owned by UTA. So there's the UTA park and ride lot with the bus drop off. There's also the UTA Mobility Center that is in this building here, and then some UTA-owned storage area here. Salt Lake County owns this area right here. It used to be their public works facility. And I think that's it, right? Yes.
In the bottom right-hand corner, it has percentages of land use.
Oh, yes. Those are the UTA parcels here represent 1.1%. But the other ownerships, Salt Lake County, that's about 3 to 4 acres.
And at one point in time, they were talking about disposing of that land and perhaps UTA was going to purchase it.
So there have been discussions between Murray and Salt Lake County and UTA about, sorry, I have to do this so that my little light is right. So this is Burke Hill Boulevard, and is that right? And the plan is to extend Burke Hill. It comes to here right now, roughly. To extend it further to the south and then turn towards Main Street to get additional circulation in this area. This parcel right here has an approval for a new apartment complex on it by Evergreen, in case you guys remember that. Oh, thank you, Susan. Salt Lake County has been in discussions with potential developers to put housing here on their parcel here. Part of that discussion would be to pick up at least part of this UTA property. And there's some contaminated soils that are in this area right here that have been consolidated and covered with a berm that would need to be cleaned up. And there are probably other environmental issues. Oh, where'd it go? on the, on the Salt Lake County parcel as well, because it was used as a public works facility, and we know kind of what happens at some of those. So there have been discussions about doing some property exchanges and dealing with some of, improving the circulation there and getting some development underway. We have some, you'll see when we get to the map that we're thinking about, we have some tweaks to that we want to talk about. Okay. So some of the issues and opportunities that we have identified related to land use is that we want to minimize adjacency conflicts, because this is still an area that has significant industrial uses. And so we want to make sure that as the area continues to transition towards more transit supportive uses, that those adjacencies are taken into account for purposes of livability. So we want to have smooth transitions between varying land uses. We also want to improve connections in the grid network, because as I think is pretty obvious on the map, we have a number of roadway and rail barriers that are throughout the area that really impact the ability of the neighborhoods to the south, the neighborhoods to the areas to the west, and even to a certain degree, the Mill Creek portion to the north because of the creek, to actually access the station itself in an easy multimodal way. So this is a map of the age of housing in the area. So the lightest color of yellow is the oldest. So you can see there's still some older single family that are scattered throughout the area that are remnants of the neighborhoods that were there before industrialization occurred. So we're going full circle here. And then the darker reds are the newer developments. And so you can see that a lot of that is the multifamily. We have the hospital here, but for the most part, it's multifamily that has come into the area since the TRAX line opened up. So the issues and opportunities there there are limited opportunities for ownership. Murray has some condos in there, and I know the townhomes, are the townhomes going to be for purchase? Oh, they're rental. Okay. Okay, what have I done? So we do want to think about the balance of renter to home ownership in the area. And we want to enhance access to opportunities, both social and economic. One of the things we heard from a lot of people in the neighborhood is that they don't have access to grocery, they don't have access to services. We do have families with children that live in this area, and they don't have, they have a couple of small playgrounds. One of them is private for the Burke Hill, and so access to activities and areas for children and youth is another thing that we heard a lot about. And we also want to increase transportation choices and connections so that people can get to the station in a number of different ways, including biking and walking, not always having to drive and park in the park and ride lot. I mentioned the environmental issues. So there's contamination, but there's also environmental considerations along Big Cottonwood Creek to improve the creek. And so that represents an opportunity to also enhance access to open space and trails for people to improve the area around Big Cottonwood Creek, clean up the contaminated areas so that they can be more developable. And this is an area that doesn't have as many trees as some of the other areas of both Murray and Mill Creek. So thinking about adding trees and adding to the tree canopy in this area would also enhance overall livability. We did hear that there's a trail that runs along the tracks and then along the creek. And particularly the stretch that runs next to the track. There are no trees there, and we were there in August, and oh my goodness. So, that's another opportunity to improve livability. So this is a heat map of the crime. And so you can see this is the 1-year data. So the bigger, the darker, the blobby, the higher the rate. And so these are rates. So we do expect that when you have a concentration of households, that just the number of calls into one location will be higher, but we would look at the rates, so per household, and it is higher than other areas of the two cities.
How does this compare to the rest of the city?
It's higher.
Can I ask you a question? So right under the station am I looking at that right? That looks
There's
like.
the station.
Yeah, and right there.
Yeah, that's called, that's a apartment complex
That
called
is an apartment.
Brickgate.
Okay.
Brickgate.
That's the old Miller development.
And then there's another hotspot.
Oh, those are,
Fifth State.
yeah, those are more traffic related. They're not traffic related right there. But when we see them like here and then down here, it's a slightly different issue than what we're experiencing right in here. So the issues and opportunities there, we want to make sure that as we think about the future in the area, we put in place some of the urban design approaches that we know work, things like visibility, lighting, making sure we don't have blind alleys, making sure things are connected and that people can see what's going on in different areas. Part of this area here has some dead ends. And then also access control and maintenance and dealing with some issues with vacancy. We do have some storefronts that are vacant in the area, and that gives an impression that there's not much going on, even though there are a lot of people living down here. So we do want to think about how to improve some of those things in the area in terms of urban design. And start to address some of that and make sure that as new development occurs, we don't repeat some of those issues. Any questions about that?
I see you have a proposed, proposed road connection north of Big Cottonwood Creek. And that goes right through what I know we've already approved of as a high-density, another apartment complex. I wonder if you've included that development in your plan?
Yes.
Okay.
And if that dotted line isn't exact to what was, it's roughly, is that right, Rob? It's part of their plan. It's close. Okay.
I have a question. You were talking about the need for more trees along the river. Whose responsibility do you see that as? The developers or the cities, or is there grants for that kind of thing, or?
So the answer is, it depends on whose property it is. So if it's private property and a development proposal comes in, we would recommend that adding trees to the area would be one of the requirements of development. If it's along the trail that is owned by the jurisdiction or by the UTA or whoever owns that trail, putting that into the capital improvements plan to get some of that taken care of would be another strategy. And there are grants from Tree Utah and other organizations to help add canopy to our areas.
And does Mill Creek own any of the land along the Jordan River, or is that all like mostly private or industrial? The creek, yeah.
No, Mill Creek doesn't own any of that land.
Anything? Okay.
So connectivity is a pretty significant consideration in this area. I've already mentioned a lot of that, but in addition to the barriers that are obvious, we also have some gaps in the sidewalks throughout the area. We have we don't have enough crossings across some of those major barriers on State Street from 45th South to 39th South. There are no crossings. Mill Creek has included in their plan, is it your general plan? A new crossing that is roughly like right up here. That surprisingly, UDOT seems to be blessing at this point. We all went. We all said, "Is that what that email really said?" And so we want to think about how to better get people across State Street. At our platform event, we had several people come and talk to us who live in this neighborhood here, and they don't actually use tracks. What they use is the 200 bus on State Street, and so which is great when they're going north, but when they're going south, the current stop is about here, but to get across the street, they have to come, if they're going to do it legally, they have to come all the way down here, which of course they don't do.
It's only 7 lanes of traffic.
And they play Frogger. And so we want to deal with that. We want to talk about that and get some strategies in place. Already UTA has committed to adding additional stops so that they're not quite so far away from the opportunity to cross legally. We also believe that there's some additional bus connections that can be made. There's the 205 is the bus that comes right in here and uses the bus turnaround. We also want to see more bicycling and micro mobility connections in the area. It's kind of hard to get around. And then thinking about urban design and placemaking so that people know to come into the station. It's a hard to find station. I don't know. Well, I'm working on the station area plan, and I drive by the turn every time. Every time I go past it and go, oh shoot. So we think that there needs to be better identity for the edges here, so that people know that there's something going on there and that there's a station in there that they might want to use.
I guess I might know the answer to my question, but who's responsible for that? I mean, I guess it depends where we want to place it. If it's on state or city property, then we should place it. So, yeah. And I guess maybe we're somewhat limited in that as well because of our sign code and the expense, and if we actually own the property where we want to place it, unless it's private property. What are some of the barriers to that idea?
So if it's Murray right of way, we can put stuff on that.
That means there's nothing there.
At least for that, but I mean, if we also have to think about like State Street, putting something on State Street would be pretty challenging. Yeah, but you know, there's opportunities for sure. It's just working through them.
And keep in mind, it doesn't all have to happen tomorrow. Right. And there are signs on State Street that say, it's a little blue sign with an arrow that points to the west that says track station. Well, it's tiny, and there's a lot of stuff happening on State Street. So it gets lost in all the other visual stuff that's happening. Parking. We also have heard a fair bit about parking in the area, and so we spent some time exploring that so that we could understand it better. This area here west of the tracks, it was developed under the city's prior parking regulations. The new parking regulations have applied in the Burke Hill area. And we didn't hear as much about parking when we got into the Mill Creek area. Yay!
I don't know if that's applause or not, because that means there's plenty of it.
Well, it just, the things that we heard down in this area were that there wasn't enough parking. People were parking in the fire lanes, and that it was significant.
Well, I say that because I feel like it's a tough topic, because we talked about reducing parking so that people will walk. It doesn't always work, then they just complain about not having enough parking. But if you have a lot of parking and no one walks or bikes or skates, yeah.
I was applauding mostly because parking is a pet issue of our chair. I wanted him to take note, but I can personally attest to the parking problem in that area west of the tracks in the brick gate at Fireclay. It is the absolute biggest mess I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. But now I understand it was planned under a previous regime, so that makes sense.
Previous plan, so the occupancy of the units far exceed what I think is intended. And the developer or the property owner will continue to sell parking passes to anyone that will pay the money, regardless of whether there's actually a parking spot available for them. And so it's.
But I'll also say this is also an urban design issue, which is that the desire to reduce parking, to encourage people to use alternative forms of transportation. You have to make those alternative forms of transportation, easy and attractive. And if we want people to bike or walk in this neighborhood, we have to improve their experience.
So have a bike lane.
Right, make it easier, make that the easy way to do it, rather than I'm taking my life in my hands to do it. So that's part of what we need to think about as we move forward.
Can I mention just something?
Yeah.
That it was, you please
No, go
go. Okay, so one of the things that I found most great, I guess. Not frustrating, actually it was great. It was during when we had a meeting with our technical advisory committee. I told my planning commission this earlier tonight, but anybody that's ever said anything negative about Fireclay, I've dragged them to the table to make sure that they're part of the process to fix it. Because if they're gonna complain about it, they're gonna fix it. So one of the best things that I heard from them when we started really poking at the parking problem was that we would ask that, I think Christine asked them, so where is it happening? Where's the parking problem? And they all just pointed to the west side and the access for fire on the west side. And so we were saying, what about over here? And they're like, no problems. We don't have problems over there. And so it was just very enlightening to hear that was the case, but it was also kind of discouraging that everybody has just taken Brickgate and Avita and lopped them in as Fireclay and taken the whole district as the problem instead of just what happened before. And so that was I just wanted to share that little anecdote because that was really, really great in my opinion, so.
Okay, so you might be going to talk more about this, but you mentioned that there's bringing that one street down but then you have it turning to go out to Main Street instead of going directly to 4500, which if you're coming down 4500 and you can make a right-hand turn, why would you make a right, a left, and a right? Okay. But it's currently owned by Salt Lake County, you said. So Salt Lake County's not willing?
There's a significant grade difference there as well.
Okay, because to me, the friendliness of this is totally around that however many feet.
So 4,500 South starts to dip down right after the Main Street
Yeah.
intersection.
And then the other big glaring problem there is that is also a UDOT owned right of way, and they limit access onto their roads. They do not allow
Giving
a new
curb cut there, a new.
yeah, a new street connection. They won't. They just won't allow it. And yeah,
Yeah.
There's a difference between common sense and logic versus we've always done it this way? Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? But I mean, UDOT's saying we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you did touch on something that we did talk a lot about, which is how to get across 4,500 South. So you'll see in the plan that we do have, not necessarily there because of the issues, but other opportunities to get across 4,500 South. So just to close the loop on parking, we know that that there are issues specifically here, but for the rest of the area, the parking that's available is generally well utilized, but not full. And so for this area down here, there's some desire for more parking options. And so we have been trying to think through how to address that. We also have done a real estate market analysis and a market assessment, and I'm not going to go into detail about that. There is a lot of demand regionally for retail, for housing, for office, once the office debacle comes around. So there is opportunity in the region. So what we want to think about is what types and how does this area capture that opportunity? We have to be careful because when you first think about this area, it looks like there's a lot of capacity to attract new retail specifically, but that's because of State Street and 4,500 South. So what we really want to think about is how we set up this area internal to those two streets, those major thoroughfares, to start to really attract investment in retail and services. And, it's not purely rooftops. We always hear a lot about getting rooftops into a place to attract retail in particular. But it's also the type of rooftops you have, the household budget that's available for people to spend on things. And it's also about the environment, making people feel like they want to come there to shop, because it's the households that are there are not necessarily going to support all of the retail that we want there. So other people either coming in by tracks or coming in from other areas are going to need to help to support some of that retail internally. So we need to think about how we set this area up to attract that kind of investment. So as we're going to transition into away from what we learned, the facts, we're going to talk about the values that we heard from people about this area. So we spent a lot of time when we were doing the existing conditions learning about the challenges and the struggles. But we also learned that people who live there, particularly people who have bought condos there or have been there a little bit longer, would really like to see a complete community. They would like to see amenities, additional amenities, opportunities for them to get together and get to know each other, opportunities for social interaction, and also a chance to buy eggs and milk and bread without having to get in the car and drive away. And so the quality of life can be, go back. can be enhanced through opportunities for that type of interaction and social vibrancy. They also recognize how there are dead ends, and so increasing connectivity, and also promoting the urban design quality. There's some really good stuff that has happened over there, and so continuing that, the urban design approaches that have resulted in some cool buildings and some great streetscape, so that people feel like it's a place that they like and they recognize. And then improving safety and the perception of the area are also values that inform the direction that we think that we're recommending for this area. So I'm not going to spend much time on the alternatives because I'm going to put them up there though. What they did was think about where the center of gravity for the station area should be. Where should we put kind of our attention in terms of attracting people into the area, and where should that focus be? And so we had three options. One is focusing around the station platform itself. One would be to use Main Street as kind of that linear focus. And then the other one is to really expand the overall station area, take that core that has been doing quite well and expand it out and make it a more comprehensive transit-oriented community that has greenway connections, that has a mix of land uses and really improves the overall connectivity. So we kind of landed on that one. So this is the sketch of what we're thinking about now. I'm going to turn my back to you, but so I can see what I'm pointing at. So the scenario improves the overall connectivity through a number of methods. One is really kind of the backbone to this is this greenway system, which would be a trail system that improves multimodal access. So this would be a tracks line adjacent trail, similar to there is a stretch of that already in place. There'd also be trail along Big Cottonwood Creek, so we get east, west, and north, south. And then there would be additional greenway connectivity interior to the overall station area, including along this edge of 4500 South and using the Main Street and 4500 South crossing to get into this area. We have some single-family homes in here, but also putting a pedestrian bridge adjacent to the current tracks line so that we can extend pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to the south as we're doing a similar treatment along the tracks line to the north, getting across the creek and heading north. We're also talking about using Main Street as a bikeway. Cars would be allowed as guests on Main Street. But Main Street, what? No.
APA, they did a talk on this, the guys in Lehigh that.
Yeah, Mike and Kim, yep. But so there's no reason why cars need to be the most important on every street. They're already the most important on State Street, so they don't need to be the most important on Main Street. That's just me. But I think there's a lot of agreement around that right now. To the north of both of you, South Salt Lake is already moving towards making their stretch of Main Street bikeway. And Salt Lake City, as Main Street goes through the ballpark neighborhood, is also doing that. So the idea is that Main Street can become a bikeway connection from here all the way north up into Salt Lake City. And so that concept is integrated into this particular station area plan. So that's part of that overall connectivity. Now there are some big lifts on this map too. Just in case you haven't seen them already on there. We are showing an additional, so right now Fireclay Avenue comes across the tracks line and dead ends down here at 200 West. We're showing an extension across the Union Pacific line so that Fireclay would come all the way down to 300 West. The Fireclay is below the grade of the UP line now. And so what we're exploring, and it would require railroad engineers to do the real exploration, but going under it. Now, we're also including improvement of an existing underpass. Now all the Mill Creek people go, yes. At Central Avenue, which is one of the scariest underpassings I've ever been through. The honk if you're approaching this. And so improving that so that it not only can be a fully functioning underpass, but also can take pedestrians and bikes so that we have additional connectivity. So that both of those big moves will require coordination with Union Pacific, which will be which is why this isn't necessarily a 5-year stretch here. This will take some doing and coordinating. But when we do that, if we can get those two connections either in place or improved, that opens up this area to the west of the Union Pacific line for additional transit supportive development. So those areas can also transition. We did meet with the property owners of this area here, and they are open to that type of transition, but they recognize that the connectivity needs to be improved. So, the diagram for connectivity that we're looking at improves connectivity to the west, it improves connectivity to the south, and it does have additional opportunities to improve connectivity to the east across State Street. They would be crosswalks. A bridge would be super expensive. Any thoughts or feedback on that diagram?
How realistic is it? I mean, theory sounds great.
So there are a couple, she asked how realistic it is, sorry. There are a couple of things playing in your favor right now. The federal government has a Connecting Communities grant that I think dealing with these issues right here would be a pretty good submittal for that grant. And once you have the Connecting Communities grant from the Federal Department of Transportation, they have a little more pull in getting Union Pacific to the table.
Then the north-south bike paths and the east-west bike path along the river, how realistic is that? I mean, I like it, sounds great. How much land would have to be purchased? How much width is existing there?
So right now, the way that both cities are handling improving the trail and areas adjacent to Big Cottonwood Creek are through development requirements. So for the most part, getting the rest of this in place would require those parcels to be redeveloped or to come under new development. But it's been working. It is a strategy that both cities are using. And it's effective when the opportunity is there. So no, it doesn't necessarily require going out and purchasing it, but the cities both require setbacks away from the creek for the health of the creek. And those setback areas can be used to install trail.
What about on the east side, outside of our development area here along the creek? There's some pretty significant hardscape that's been installed due to flood mitigation. Is a trail system along there realistic, or is that something that be able to be dealt with?
And then sorry.
So some of that is going to be very difficult. I would probably focus my time more on moving this area eastward because it gets westward. Yes, sorry, because it actually gets easier once you're able to get underneath I-15. Because all from I-15 to the Jordan River, on both sides of the creek are owned by Salt Lake County. So that could connect to the Jordan River Parkway a lot easier. The Big Cottonwood Creek side going pretty much through Mill Creek and Murray, it's all pretty much residential backyards through
Up
most
here,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, and even through the rest of
Yeah.
what is in Murray, it's all residential backyards. That'll be very difficult. So probably not realistic to continue it, at least not in the next 10, 15 years. Yeah.
But using the creek system is a sort of regional goal to help with connectivity.
And then what about that idea of putting a park above 4500 South? Is that still contemplated, or has that been?
The lid?
Yeah, the lid.
Oh, the lid. Okay. Oops, now I'm dropping other things on the floor. So what we're talking about is because 4500 South is below grade relative to the development on either side here, it is possible.
Like we do in Dallas?
Yeah, like in Dallas, and there's one in Boston, and there's one in Phoenix, where they cap the highway and connect the two sides. That is not out of the question. Although when we said it to the UDOT representative, I thought he was going to have a conniption. But he did come back and say it's not out of the question. But it is possible to do that. It would be very expensive. And from our perspective, as we're looking at the infrastructure, our being the consulting team, when we're looking at the investment in some of the connectivity elements, we want to make sure that the future development opportunity around those connectivity elements makes sense for the level of investment. Does that make sense? So when we look at the idea of the cap or the lid across 4500 South, it would mean that we need to think about a lot more intensive development on either side of it to justify that level of investment. And when we asked members of the community about the intensity of use here, what we heard from them was this medium density approach that is already in place. They didn't necessarily think that going much more intense would be something that they would want in that area. Does that make sense? So we are proposing additional bridging across 4500 South, but not the lid.
Can I ask a question? But I have two questions. The one's about the green corridor. So I just want to, I know we talked about that a little bit already, but you're saying that we would be able to develop that when these properties are redeveloped?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so based on your previous map where we looked at the development age of some of these properties, that's going to take us 50 years to do that, right?
most of the east-west, at least from state to, pretty much to the Union Pacific, well, I guess to the edge of Murray, is already developed. Yeah, the north-south, that,
So
can I
there's
use
a-
your laser for a second?
Yes.
How do I do it? So I don't.
So this is the laser.
Okay, perfect. So, right here,
It's already there.
yeah, so it's already there. Because our current trail system goes from here, goes up, and then comes down to cross the rail line, and then goes back up, and then connects over. So this section right here is already done. This, yeah, that's the one with no trees. But that could be, but that is already in place, and we can improve that, right? This section, this is all not developed, and this is all not developed. So there are opportunities for that in those sections, I think. But then getting further down,
And
yes.
so where that blue line is solid, that's already in place. And Mill Creek has, as part of the development that is under construction here, they have this section going in on the north side as well. So some pieces of it are in place.
Okay, and then, so if we're looking right at the center where, yeah, so this trail system would run along the tracks, correct? And so I mean, that whole section right there, except for, it is developed, right? Am I not? I mean, there's a section on the bottom right that's not developed, but, I mean, this is all developed. This is developed, this is developed. We have a section here that's not, maybe that section, but this is all developed up here. And then if you go further south, I don't see it feasible for this to all happen where a developer comes in and wants to redo it and we put it, I mean, it's a great idea and I think we could do it over time. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying it's going to take a really, really, really long time for that to connect and have that be a walkable corridor from north to south.
I want to address a little piece, and then I think Erica wants to come up for a second. So you're not wrong looking at that map. Some of that is newly developed. However, going on to the Brickgate side of that, it's a very wide, if you get into the street view on it, it's a very wide section. That sidewalk is probably, geez, I don't know, it's really wide. And then adjacent to the tracks, that can be redone. And then when you get south of 4500 South, everything on the west side of that, that's old. That's very old stuff. And that could easily be redeveloped. And push some of those, even if it's, I mean, even worst case scenario, it gets redeveloped as another manufacturing, because that's what the zoning is right there right now is manufacturing. If it gets redeveloped as manufacturing, we could still move that further west and widen that corridor. And you are right though, it is not going to be done in 5 years, and it's probably not going to be done in 10 years, but having the plan, having it written down on a plan gives the city direction that when it's time to redevelop those places, we have that in there so that we can ask for those things to come.
And, sorry.
Well, this question is, should we wait for the development? If we just wait for it all to happen.
Right. So I would recommend that, and I'm going to move the slide forward because we have other bits to talk about, and you'll see why I'm bringing that up. As we're thinking about the phasing of this, I mean, this is a big area and this is a lot, right, to think about. You already have quite a lot of good stuff happening right in here. And so what we're thinking is it would grow out from what you currently have in the circle. And so those opportunities, so yeah, this is probably going to be much later, but that's okay because the idea is that we're growing out from the existing center and then picking those up. And one thing I would say is that the Mill Creek side of the trail here was included in a plan that was done 13 years ago. When did that happen? 12 years ago? No, I know, but the Mill Creek, the plan that first put that on there was the plan that I did for the connection. Yeah, right, and it was like 12 years ago. And so sometimes it takes that long, but if we put it on the plan, we don't lose track of it. And we can help to make that happen. Yeah, and it would be nice to be able to just go in and put in the whole complete plan, but the complete trail looping system now. But that's just not a financial reality that we're really living with.
I guess part of the reason I asked about retail space because I think sometimes we build something and
right.
We don't get the retail we want.
Right.
First.
So connectivity, that's the first thing we think about, but we're also thinking about the land uses. So one of the things that we realized when we first were looking at the area is that this neighborhood has a pretty high concentration of the affordable housing units for both cities. This is where a lot of the affordable housing for both Murray and Mill Creek has been developed. And so in order to really attract the kind of services and amenities and stores that people are asking for, we need to make sure that there's more diversity in the types of housing, both rental and ownership, but also market rate and affordable. So I'm not saying stop building affordable housing here, but I'm saying build market rate housing here as well. And as that happens, expendable household income goes up, and the area will be able to attract additional investment in some of those services and stores that people are looking for. So that's a critical part of the plan. In order to make that work, we need to also think about public amenities and addressing the comments that we heard about being able to have social interaction and other types of opportunities to gather as a community. This green area here is in what is currently the UTA Park and Ride lot. And so we are recommending that part of that be repurposed into a plaza that gets, well, we will address the need for additional parking in a different way, but identifying an area for the community to gather that can be programmed, that also can be lined and edged with community uses and restaurants and other types of activities that cause people to gather and interact. So that's another piece of thinking about that. So when we're thinking about the amenities in urban design, these are some of our precedent images. So this is a much more rural type of trail. So the trail as it comes through this area would be a little more urban, which is fun and exciting to think about the opportunity to have restaurants and cafes that have patio seating adjacent to the trails and other types of activities for people adjacent to the trails, parks and things like that. The plaza concept is one that can also add green space, not just hardscape, but also additional green space into the neighborhood, which is also lacking, but making sure that it's part of an urban environment so that it feels enclosed and safe and people have opportunities to get a coffee and go out there and things like that. And then this intersection here is we we believe, the ideal location to add grocery into this neighborhood. Now, that's the parcel, that's Main Street and 4500 South. Burying the grocery further into the neighborhood is problematic because they're going to want to use the market opportunity numbers, the expenditure depth from a broader area than just the immediate neighborhood, and we need to be able to have visibility and get people there.
I haven't heard it. Everyone wants them.
Right. Well, it will probably require finding the right fit of a grocer. We're thinking more along the lines of a public market with fresh foods and vendors that are within the market rather than, say, a Harmon's or whatever. And so it will require some thoughtful design and then have housing above it. In order to address the need for additional housing. So that's part of that concept.
Can I ask you a question about amenities?
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to earlier that a lot of the amenities that have been put in by the developments just for use of their own residents. So I get that these would do some things to like connect, but as far as like interconnection between all of the different apartments or, buildings or whatever, like how do we have a trail and we have a green area, but like how else would we like require their amenities to be like, or require them to put in certain amenities, or like how do we address that?
I think it's a combination. There will probably need to be some public investment in some of these amenities. And this is something that I mention to communities pretty frequently, which is when you're approving multifamily housing development, you always require them to have an amenity package that's available to the people who live in the apartment complex, which in my simple thinking, to me is the equivalent of if I have a single family home, that's my backyard. So that amenity package, it would be the equivalent of my own backyard. But my city, and both of these cities also provide public parks within those neighborhoods where people have backyards, but they also have public parks where everybody can go from all the different developments and gather and interact. So just because you're requiring an amenity package as part of the multifamily development doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a need for a public park there in that neighborhood as well. Yeah. No.
And two, like, we were talking in the MCCD specifically how you can have like enclosed spaces, but that are still open to the public, right? Like little, so you would have things that would all face, like a plaza or something, but it doesn't mean that would be a private space or restricted only to residents, right? And so I feel like that would be really helpful in this area also, that these amenities that we are requiring developments to do also are thinking about how they're interconnecting to the other buildings and the other communities, that like you wouldn't have to be restricted about what amenities you had access to, I guess.
Right. So it'd be publicly accessible private space.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we do that with, when you have a setback and you require them to do like seating areas and things, that's the same thing. Any other, it's 10 to 8.
Okay. So I say this as someone who hasn't lived here really that long. So people keep telling me you're not allowed to have park dedication fees as part of it when an area is being developed. So I want you to react to that. I come from a place where if a developer is putting in a big project, it's not just about having some open space or amenities, but they have to put money that goes towards park dedication so that at some point a city will have enough money to buy a park.
Both cities impose park impact fees. So that's exactly what they are. For each new door that is developed, each city charges a certain amount that goes into the Park Impact Fee Fund that is then used to invest in new parks or new park amenities in order to serve, to make sure that the growth in the number of people in a community, that the level of service for parks keeps pace with the number of people moving in, so that the new people aren't eroding the level of service for existing people, but that they're getting the same level of service. So that both cities impose park impact fees. So there is a fund for that.
Okay, I feel like I've asked this before, but so it's my not
I didn't
understanding something.
misspeak, did I,
He's saying
Robert?
yes. You're saying yes, okay. It's just that we're a new city and we don't have very much money saved.
Right.
No, it's probably me, not you, but anyway,
So,
good. We
so
just need more time.
both cities do have a fund that can be used in that way.
Okay, so I want to take up your point for just a minute, and I think it's additive to yours. So what I'm seeing here, though, is we don't, in either city, except for that little space that you just talked about, have places where we're taking what used to be a lot of industry and we're converting it to be more residential and housing. So and I'm new on planning in Mill Creek, so I'll ask the question, do we have in this space some green space where we're saying this needs to be a park? That you know, we have all this industrial stuff, and yes, we're gonna let developers come in and develop, but are we saying that on the west side where we're gonna build a new road over where that purple and orange is over to the I-15, do we have a park in there somewhere? And can we put a park in there somewhere? Like, I don't understand, like, why can't we? It's not developed yet, right?
Right, and I totally understand and agree with your point. I think that because that barrier for the Union Pacific, so for the west side specifically, in all honesty, this plan will probably evolve over the next 10 years. So yes, we're looking forward to that stuff, but it's not getting down to that granular level, right? And then, so and it will actually come as kind of the next process as well. So as part of this, we'll get an implementation plan, right? And then both cities, Mill Creek and Murray, will probably continue to work together on making some sort of unified development, you know, so it seems more unified across both cities. And in that, you know, it'll probably be some sort of code. And we can require, you know, a certain percentage of that is going to be used for either public open space or whatever. And we'll get more into that more granular, I'm saying that word right?
Right,
Okay.
that's right.
I'm questioning whether I'm saying the words right. We'll get more into that more fine grained detail.
But you bring up a great point that I think needs to be addressed in the plan, and we haven't written the plan yet, right? Is that this area, as even now, as we've added households on both sides of the boundary, it doesn't meet the current level of service for park space per 1,000 population in either of the cities. And so this plan should address the need for that additional green space. And we have included some pieces, but what I haven't done, and we will do, thank you for triggering this, is actually put the number together to see how that impacts that level of service number that we want to think about, which, you know, for parks, we measure as, you know, acres per 1,000 population. You've probably heard that a bit. And so we'll need to look at that and make sure that the plan whether we actually identify where they should be, which is always a little dicey, that we at least include in the plan a goal and a strategy that level of service be attained.
But to be clear, neither city currently owns a parcel of property that could
To
be
do that,
converted.
right, that's right, that's right.
But, you know, and it's, the more I think about it, it's so severely lacking in this area. I think, one, because it was an industrial redevelopment that we all are kind of just like, oh, well, whatever. But two, at least I know in Murray, those kids don't even have, there's not a school over there. There's
No.
not even a school, like playground, grassy
No,
area.
that's true in Mill Creek. as
They
well.
all go and get bussed over like far away. So like they're really like, especially on the Murray side, it's really barren. Like there is,
Right.
yeah.
And that is something we heard. It was the need for youth activities and something for the kids to do. Not just in this area, but even in Mill Creek over here west of the freeway, you've got the Sunnyvale neighborhood as well. They have a small community center, but they could use some additional resources. Well, there are a lot of kids in the Sunnyvale neighborhood. And then we have other neighborhoods that are developing over here that we could probably, they could probably use some services as well. So it's 5 to 8. And we have done all my actual slides. I managed it, so.
30 seconds.
Yeah,
And this is just an idea for future thought, probably with our planning staff on both cities, but I would be open to, rather than having, let's say we have a project that needs 3 amenities, rather than having a developer put those all in, maybe they just put in one and defer the other. So if there's another project and it makes sense that you have a larger amenity that's then shared, and you have a better overall outcome than just a dog walking area and some barbecue pits on every development. Maybe you have a dog walking area and then you have a better amenity
Yeah.
that's a combined.
that's a good idea. I will have to explore how.
And my one piece of feedback is, I understand your rationale for placement of that market, but the placement of that market, I also don't think is going to be conducive to bicycling and foot traffic, especially along 4500. You're going to get people going up to Smith and then coming down to this market and back and forth, and they'll need their car. So given that your rationale is sound for that placement, and given that we're looking out 10, 20 years, I would build into the plan a
An
vision for
interior
an
one.
internal
Okay.
market as well,
Well,
more interior to the
I think
neighborhood.
this is,
South. Is
Yeah,
there?
right.
There is a little one in the
Yeah.
one north of,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking closer to the core
Yeah.
for people who are bicycling in or getting off the station. They want to pick up eggs and bread right after work when they get off the station. Perhaps that's not feasible now, but 20 years from now, maybe it will be.
thank you.
What is the current residential population in the study area, and have you projected that out any?
Wait, is it on here?
I think it's about 2,200.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's right around 2,000.
Yeah.
And we have projected it out, but and it's 7,500 in the 20-year timeframe.
Just for, and I was trying to find this earlier.
That's not in there.
I think the 2,000 is mostly on Murray side. And that is, I think, 20% of District 1 is just in Fireclay. Yeah.
Sure.
So I know that the ultimate goal would be to get some kind of grocery or amenities and things inside the Fireclay area. But it seems like how feasible if something went in like on State Street, right? Where it's actually like maybe kind of close enough that they could get there. They wouldn't need a car, more likely of a place for it to go.
I feel like we've always wondered.
There's some high quality bars there.
No, but like you. No, it's true, but even on the other side, on the 45th side, there might, I don't know, I mean,
Well, yeah, this is the auto. So, yeah.
That's the right answer.
what about on the east side of it? Of State Street? I mean, that's one more crossing and one more
Right.
step
Costa
away.
Rica,
Costa Vida.
all the restaurants.
So,
Grocery stores there.
yeah.
Safeway used to be years.
I was just, in trying to find some better public engagement places, Elvon, our economic development specialist, he has access to this software called Placer AI. It's not artificial intelligence, but what it does is look at cell phone data and where people are going and where they're shopping, where they're eating. Yeah, of course. But it was actually quite kind of interesting. We were playing around with it today, specifically in the Fire Clay area. And to your point with that Costa Vida, I don't even think it's in the top 10 in the places that they go. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, right. And so, I mean, I think State Street is such a significant barrier that, I mean, maybe, I don't even know if it's big enough, but maybe north of where Paris is, maybe that's a place. It's the other place, thrift store, I think. I don't know if that would be big enough for a
Yeah,
market.
so I mean, this concept is not a full-fledged, that we're thinking of, it's not a full-fledged grocery store. If we wanted a full-fledged grocery store, you need a lot of depth of the parcel. And so the Paris parcel is deep enough. Ruben's chuckling. But like these are probably not deep enough. The DI parcel is probably
They're community focused, maybe we can talk into it.
perfect.
Well, can't you do, like the Walmart neighborhood market or the Harmon's, like they did in downtown Holiday? That's kind of size that, in a neighborhood like that, you'd get people going right after work before they.
Yeah, it's the same conversation I have with neighborhoods that want a Trader Joe's. Yeah, well, the Harmon's neighborhood market has certain demographics that they're looking for, which are similar to the Trader Joe's demographics. And they're not the demographics of at least not today. The Walmart format needs a lot of parking, and so we'd have to think about that.
And you don't have all these stores
I've been in,
Oh, not,
in like 3 cities with Walmarts that have no parking,
yeah,
that are in downtown design areas. You talk about, hey, they build them in other places, they build one here. You can give them the numbers on
Yeah.
population.
that's the deal. None of us are grocery store owners.
which is why finding the right partner is critical for making that happen. Okay. It's 8:05, and I was told I had to until 8. Actually, probably was supposed to stop before now. The next steps will be that we're going to take your input, we're going to include it, fold it into where we are right now with the preliminary approach, and bring that back through your staffs and let you look at that and start to put the writing around that and the recommended goals and strategies and start to put together that implementation plan. Okay, so you'll see us again. I appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation.
the project, find out about it, percent. We need to start selling this to the rest of the community because it's about.
So, one of our steps is we met with a lot of the property owners, and we loop back around with them, show them what we've got, and talk to them about what's in this plan and get their feedback as well.
GSBS is probably sick of me. I would find a new contact like every couple of weeks and be like, contact these people, do this, do this.
Are we in contact with the Gordons?
No, we haven't talked to the Gordons. I'm sorry. I didn't hop 45th. I was staying on the, yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know how exactly this works.
Do we adjourn?
I think Mill Creek needs to adjourn. And then we have one small business item to
Oh,
take care of.
okay. So,
What did you have? Oh, yeah. So the Mill Creek Planning Commission will adjourn the combined meeting.
Okay, now.
Okay, thank you. We will be fast. We just have one very fast item. We have a finding of fact. It is for Legacy Materials Concrete Block Production, Manufacturing, and Storage. Unless anybody has an issue, we can entertain a motion.
Ned's got it.
Got a Or we could just sit here. I mean, I don't care.
Oh. I'm still on agenda item number 1.
We're on 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for Legacy Materials. Excuse me, the finding of fact for Legacy Materials.
Okay, we have a
As
motion
written.
from Commissioner Hacker. Do we have a second?
That
We got a
was hard.
second from Vice Chair Milkevich. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Zach, do we have any business or? Okay, I will not be here next meeting, so Lisa will be acting chair. Okay. Then we can have a motion to adjourn. 8:08, motion to adjourn by Commissioner Nay. Second? We got a second by Commissioner Patterson. All in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.